Bendina Miller, who's had a very long career in leadership positions in the field of education, most recently as superintendent in the Rocky Mountain District in British Columbia, where she has played a singularly important role in advancing inclusive education from a systems level. Over to you, Bendina, to share your perspectives on how we move this forward.
Good morning, everyone. I am just so delighted to be sharing this time with all of you, and I just want to say back to Michael that I am confident that in my school district, Rocky Mountain School District number 6, that I, in fact, provided support. The power behind inclusion really has been the classroom teachers, the administrators, the board, and parents along with their children in our communities. So I really want to emphasize that, and I must say that I'm quite distracted right now by much of what Calvin has said, and so I'm going to try to focus on what I'd like to share with you this morning. It is morning here. I want to talk first of all about setting the stage, about what it looks like when we reflect on inclusion. We all have our histories. As Michael said, I have just retired after 42 years in public education. But when I reflect on inclusion, I think back to when I was a teenager, and there was a young woman who came home from the institution in Red Deer every summer and was sent back every September to spend 10 months of each year at the training center in Red Deer. At the end of one summer, her father, who was a custodian in my mother's school, my mother was a teacher, came to my mother and said that his daughter did not want to go back to the institution, and if the family kept her at home, would my mother have her in her classroom? Without hesitation, my mother said, well, absolutely. So my first knowledge of, we didn't label it then inclusion, it was just a matter of keeping a young woman home in her community where she wanted to be with her friends. So my first experience really was one where it was a matter of relationships, it was a matter of will to support the desires of a child, and a matter of will to ensure that all kids could be with their peers. That was my first experience with inclusion, and I'd love to be able to go back and analyze it further, but I know that each and every one of us has an experience where we would say, that was inclusion, now what made it work? The other setting the stage that I think is very critical for all of us to reflect on is, as Michael mentioned, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and particularly Article 24. Canada ratified the UN Convention March the 11th of 2010, and I was very fortunate to be at the signing ceremony where Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, along with our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lawrence Cannon, representing Canada, signed the convention. What I think is important for us to all know is that in Canada, for a convention to be signed, a UN convention to be ratified, that means that 10 provinces, 3 territories, and the federal government have all agreed to the convention. Well, I'd like to highlight for us some of the aspects of this convention, because there is no question that we have a lot of work to do in this country, but as educators, I think it's important for us to know what our provinces and territories have agreed to, and therefore put us in a position to be asking the right questions of our politicians about what it is they are going to be able to do and are committed to do in order to bring their commitment to the convention to reality. Article 24 says that all children have a right to education. All children have a right to an education without discrimination, on an equal opportunity basis, in an inclusive setting, in their community schools, in the communities where they live. That the recognition is that education needs to focus on full development of human potential, right from the time a child enters primary school on into post-secondary, and that excluding a child from public education must not be done on the basis of disability. The convention talks about the fact that all persons with disability should have reasonable accommodations in order to be fully engaged in their learning, and also talks very clearly about the fact that boards and ministries, governments have a responsibility to hire appropriately trained staff and to provide appropriate training for staff who are currently involved with the public education system. Now that means training for professionals and all staff who work in all levels of education. So I'm just going through very quickly the highlights of Article 24, but I would really encourage everyone on this call to read the article very carefully, to consider what it means in terms of the practice in each of your provinces and what it is that we need to do to further align the provincial and territorial practices and supports in order to bring us to a full conclusion where all children are able to attend their neighborhood schools in an inclusive setting. Now, I don't want to be simplistic about what is inclusive and what is essential in order to build quality education for all students. Education is a complex exercise, and we know that from the point of view of professionals, I fully believe that teachers, educators, all support staff in our schools, our administrators, need to be applauded for the incredible work done that really focuses on what is best for all children. We know that all children are more successful in an inclusive setting. That's one of the aspects that has been focused on internationally when you look at results in Canada. One of the things that is said by other countries is that the Canadian students are more successful because they go to school in an inclusive setting. I'd like to highlight some of the factors that, for me, are triggers for success and that are key to building inclusive schools, inclusive school districts, and ultimately inclusive communities and provinces and territories. First of all, I think the leadership really ought to begin, as Minister Carr talked, at the provincial level. As a school district educator, I would not pretend to know how complex that is at a provincial level, but I can tell you that at a school district level, it is absolutely key that we have boards that provide the kind of leadership where they are very clear about their vision, very clear about their commitment to inclusion, and they demonstrate that clarity by ensuring that their decisions are aligned with inclusion and that as a board they are also accountable for the decisions that they make and that they hold our schools accountable as well. So that if a board sets about in terms of a vision and mission that says that all children have a right to attend school in their neighborhood schools, then what is it that that board is doing to enable that to happen? Secondly, superintendent and district management leadership, and this is an area where I have further experience in the last few years, but I can tell you that the support that a board provides to senior staff in the school district is key to that senior staff being able to do the right job. District practice and organizational structures can make a huge difference. I think about the long-term commitment in my previous school district to ensuring that all staff have the opportunity for staff development that continues to engage staff as lifelong learners, continues to engage our staff in terms of building their capacity to do the work they want to do. And Calvin said, teachers come to school wanting to do the best for all students. And we have an obligation as a school district to provide the opportunity for those teachers to improve their skills, to ask the right questions, to learn together in an inclusive setting. And I've purposely said in an inclusive setting because I really believe that if we are saying that we have a responsibility for our students to attend school in an inclusive setting, then we also have a responsibility to ensure that our staff can learn in that way as well. Let me just give you one example. Our school district has very exciting and successful long-term staff development planned jointly with the teachers, QP, support staff, and administrators, along with senior staff. And that key means that our staff are learning together. An example is learning rounds, where we've had support staff, regular classroom teachers, administrators working together with an outstanding professional leader. One example is Leighton Schnellert. Another example is Susan Close, where the staff are learning in an authentic setting, in other words, in a classroom, where they are observing the outstanding professional presenters and facilitators working with students, demonstrating their capacity to engage all learners in a successful way. And that's only one example of what I think is a very practical way for us to say that as school districts, we are assisting our teachers in building capacity, assisting all of our staff in building the capacity to be confident in working with students, to ask the kind of questions where we learn together, and ultimately to be able to focus and recognize that success for students is also based on success for our staff. Our principals and vice principals as leaders in the school and community are absolutely key parts of the team, as I've already talked about, with our support staff, teachers, QP staff, and with parents. I think it's absolutely critical that we see principals and vice principals as learning leaders, so that they are attending the same staff development sessions as the teachers are attending, so that when they leave the staff development sessions, which are offered on a long-term basis, it's not one-shot staff development, but on a long-term basis, they can engage in the conversation that deepens learning, and they can engage in the conversations where the teachers say, you know, I've tried it, but it's not working for me. What do you think we can do differently? And so it, again, builds a strong team, a team of understanding, a team of compassion and commitment within a school that, again, offers that ability to recognize and celebrate success and to build on each other's capacity to do an amazing job for all students. I may be sounding a bit Pollyanna, but I can tell you very clearly that I have witnessed outstanding enthusiasm and success from our staff working together in teams, learning from each other, asking the deep and painful questions about what is it that I can do differently in order to achieve greater success for our students and greater satisfaction for me as an educator. The bottom line for me, and I know for the vast majority of educators, is inclusive education. The bottom line, I know for all educators, is that it is about success for all students. And following 42 years in education and many years in community living volunteering, I can honestly tell you that success for all students means success for students who are diverse learners, along with success for those students who are highly achieved academic learners. And I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. Back to you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Bendina, for sharing that perspective from the local level, the district level, and also the kind of principles which have guided your leadership, and as you say very clearly, your team's leadership, because it takes a team to make this happen at the local level.